Hey guys, thank you for tuning in. Hope you're having a great day. I wanted to talk to you about something that happened recently to me, a trip I had recently. And it's rare for me to do so because usually it takes me a long time to interpret and integrate a psychedelic experience, especially the powerful ones. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this one, even though it happened like literally 2 weeks ago, is because I'm just getting a lot of people online talking about this very experience. It seems like a lot of us are going through this at the same time, or for some reason this information is just wanting to be shared right now. It's pretty crazy actually, but I would really appreciate it if you guys shared your opinion on what I went through, and if you've gone through something similar, shared your experience maybe in the comments or on Instagram with me, because yeah, I want to make a follow-up video that kind of goes a little bit more in detail about this encounter with these specific entities that I'll be talking about. So I'll try and tell the story quickly. It's actually a funny one because basically I haven't wanted to do DMT for a long time, not a proper trip of DMT. And I was kind of almost beating myself up because I was like, man, I own this psychedelic channel. Like, I feel like I almost have a responsibility to be tripping intensely and not be afraid to do so. But I just had no motivation to do it. I really just did not want to trip hard for quite a while. And then out of nowhere, this instinct or this drive just said, it's time to do it. I really want to do it. And so I was like, okay, hell yeah, this is what I've been waiting for a long time. And so I decided to do, 3 good tokes of DMT. And I'm glad I didn't rush anything because I think if I did, it may have resulted in a bad trip. And this one was a pretty awesome and beautiful experience. Or at least a very awesome experience. So I loaded a pipe up with some DMT, laid in bed and got ready to smoke 3 tokes. Did 2, healthy big tokes of DMT, but spaced them out a little bit, and then was just kind of sitting there while I was feeling the second hit, just kind of waiting for things to kick in, or waiting for that just kind of getting ready to do the 3rd toke. And just as I'm about to smoke that 3rd one, I get this knock on the door, and my brother actually walks on in. He freaking comes in and he starts talking to me about some religious experience we've had on that. Oh crap, it's raining. It wasn't meant to rain today. Hold on guys, let me put this camera inside, one sec. Sorry about that guys. Where was I? Yes, so I was sitting on my bed about to do a 3rd toke, and then my brother literally knocks on the door, walks on in. And some of you may know my brother is pretty intensely Christian. It's actually an interesting story. I should tell it on this channel someday. He did like DMT like a year ago, and he was recovering from a meth psychosis. His life was not on a good direction, and this DMT trip just gave him a whole 180. He walks in, starts talking to me about these synchronicities he had on the day. For Luke, he interprets them as messages from God. So he's talking to me about the new message from God, and I'm kind of like tripping balls on DMT, and I'm kind of like, man, now's not really the time. And he's like, I'm about to smoke, I'm in the middle of smoking DMT, I'm about to literally do a 3rd toke. And my brother's just kind of like, look man, these things happen for a reason. Just starts continuing to talk. So I'm getting a little bit annoyed, but then, I kind of thought about it. I was like, maybe he's right. Maybe, he is here for a reason. So I asked him, I was like, do you mind kind of being quiet for a second and just looking after me, or like trip sitting me while I do a 3rd toke, because this is going to get pretty intense probably. So he agrees. But he says to me, all good, on one condition, you just listen to the song while you trip. And I was like, okay. I have Psytrance loaded, that's kind of what I feel like listening to. And he's like, Jack, 1 year ago, you told me how to smoke the DMT experience, you chose the music for me, let me do the same for you. So I was like, fine. Gives me the phone, it's got freaking Holy Spirit guided Christian tongues music. I was like, okay, fine. So I put my headphones in, start playing the song, and it was actually pretty awesome, to be honest. Like, it was actually one of the sickest songs I've listened to whilst doing a trip. I'll even link the song in the description, because I said I'm not even Christian, but the song was gangster on DMT. I hit hit my 3rd toke. Everything becomes super trippy, having pretty impressive open-eyed visuals, and I decide it's time to sit back and meditate and let things happen. So I lay back, close my eyes, And immediately this music starts lifting me up and I feel like I'm rising, and I get these visuals of basically what feels like heaven behind clouds. And as this guy's singing in Latin, or I think he starts singing in English, talking like praising the Holy Spirit, he's just got a beautiful language, and it's this divine manner of singing that is just really setting the mood. And so the clouds are parting and I feel like I'm going into heaven. Let your will be done. And so I'm really excited. I'm like, yes, this is going to be a sick trip. But suddenly the song kind of takes a real quick turn and his singing just stops. And I remember I enter into heaven, but then I have no idea where I am suddenly. And he starts speaking in tongues, or like glossolalia, where you're just kind of saying things that don't belong to any particular language, but they just sound really super trippy, especially when you're on DMT. And when he starts doing this, I feel like I'm suddenly swept up in this bubble that's isolated from any other notions of reality or any psychological continuity, or any kind of aspect of space-time even. Although there is linear time perception, but it just feels like I'm not part of this reality anymore. And I'm not really having any thoughts because my instinct is telling me, for some reason, it's just like, be quiet, don't speak. And as I'm going quiet and I'm just starting to like listen and concentrate to what's going on, I feel like there's this presence that's surveying me, like outside of the bubble, and it's watching me. And it's almost freaky and it's intense. And you know, this is happening while this dude is speaking in this weird language. And so I'm just kind of like, okay, just stay silent, whatever you do. Almost feels like there's a predator lurking around, but no, it didn't feel like a predator. That's the wrong term. It was more like there was something that was examining me, and it was like in order to pass the test, I had to be quiet. So anyway, the tongues stop, and the guy starts singing the music again, and then I feel the presence leave. I exit the bubble. I'm back into my mind, and then I'm rising again. But the DMT kind of kicked in a gear, and I can't really remember what happened there, but I just remember suddenly being inside this like, well, I was in this, I think I was in darkness, and I could suddenly see these, geez, man, I'm trying to explain DMT visuals. It's freaking hard, especially when it happened so recently. If you know like the way that certain Chinese or Indian temples are so like immaculately designed, with all the little patterns and things like that. Just imagine that sort of intricate architecture with kind of demented faces on there. That was, but no sense of sentience or presence in it, as if they were statues. And this was like unfurling out of the darkness. There was like a plethora of these like weird statue things just unfurling and uncurling out of the darkness. And after they'd all fully extended, I suddenly see these three doctors, or these white silhouetted entities kind of descending down on me. And once they fully like descend down on me, I'm in the operating room. It's really interesting because this is the first time that I remembered being in the operating room as soon as I came out of a trip. Before this, it was almost like these flashbacks I was having, and I'd have to sit there and be like, did that really happen? Did I really go there? Was I really experiencing that? But as soon as I was on the operating table in this trip, I was like, oh, I'm back here. Here I am, and the doctors are doing their work on me again. And I knew instinctively not to think. Once again, don't think. That's what was the message that was being passed through to me. But this time, it was because for some reason I had a memory of, in the past, being operated on by these doctors and having my thoughts interfere with the procedure. So immediately I was like, okay, I know to trust these beings. I've been here before. I know that they do some work and it helps me out. So I'm just going to go quiet and relax. Now, I know in my previous encounters with these beings, even though I don't know where these memories come from, but I know I have memories of being in the operating room and having these machine-off doctors essentially using light tools to kind of do some sort of weird procedure on my mind itself. And it's not painful, it's barely tactile, but there's some sort of sense or sensory experience that takes place where you feel these instruments just kind of interacting with your mind. It's full on, and it's hyper real. It's a hyper real experience. Unfortunately, I wish I could explain it in better detail, but because I know always when I'm there not to think, it makes it very hard to obviously take in a lot of the details. I do know though that they almost always appear as white silhouetted beings, and there's just a sense of them being a doctor. There's always just this sense that they are doctors. And they're always standing above me, like I am on an operating table. But this was the first time that I ever had a sense of their gender. I could feel that two of them, I think, were male and one of them was female. And one of the males put his hand on my head and his other hand on my heart, whilst the female came over with like some sort of weird instrument, kind of like a needle and a thread it felt like, and started like just interacting with my left eye. And after a couple of seconds, I felt this massive release in tension in my left eye. And amazingly, it wasn't the tension that built up during the trip. It was a tension that I felt like I'd been holding on to before I smoked the DMT. And that seemed to be all they wanted to do. As soon as that tension was released, she pulled back the instrument, they ascended without saying a word, and they were gone. And I opened my eyes, and my brother's in the freaking corner of the room doing tongues and praying for me. So, you know, I kind of just like move about to indicate that I'm back from the trip. And he comes over to me and he puts one hand on my head and one hand on my heart and just starts speaking tongues. Exactly the same place that the machine off did it. So I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm just gonna stay here and just kind of rest for a bit. So I came to and I talked about, you know, what I went through and all the rest of it. And I wasn't feeling particularly, not dramatically different. Not like, you know, normally I come out of a DMT trip and you know, it feels like I've learned something incredible. I didn't feel particularly changed after this. It was a very subtle shift, other than the release in my eye. That was still being experienced. But since coming out of this trip, I have accessed all of these memories of being on the operating table again. And although this one was really clean and really efficient, it's not always like that. I think sometimes I have like an experience of them standing around me and talking with one another. It's it makes them very human in these experiences. And it's really full on. Like, I probably haven't done it justice in this trip report because, as I said, like, this only happened a couple of weeks ago, so I haven't had a lot of time to interpret this experience. To make my point, like, probably a year ago, I remember I was tripping on acid with my ex, and I was sitting at a fish and chips place with her, and suddenly these people walked past me and they were talking with one another. But I felt like I could, them talking with one another was actually the voices of the doctors operating on me. And even though I knew I was sitting there with my ex in the fish and chips place, I still felt like I was on the operating table. And it was just an incredibly weird experience. I was like, my ex was just like shocked because she was like, she could see like just the absolute confusion on my face. It was like, obviously there were some crazy theories I was having to try and deduce to try and make sense of these experiences. But I'm going to leave it there, guys. I don't want this video to drag on forever. I wanted to hear your opinions on what this experience is, because this is not unique to me. This is something that's happening to a lot of people. I actually personally believe that a lot of these alien abduction stories you hear about is quite possibly this experience itself. Because you hear about people being on an operating table, having aliens interacting with them with incredibly advanced tools, while a blinding white light is down on them, coming down on them. There's always white light when I'm on these operating tables. So yeah, I would not be surprised if these alien abduction stories is actually this experience. I think this is incredibly common, and it's happening to a lot of us. Yeah, if you've had an experience, let me know in the comments or hit me up on Instagram, because I would love to quote it in the future video I make on going in depth in this experience. And if you have any theories as to why we're experiencing this, let me know in the comments or hit me up on Instagram on my messages. I would be absolutely grateful for that. But in the meantime, guys, I just wanted to do a thank you to my patrons, and especially my top patrons, Wersland, Casper, Huizenga. There's also another guy, but he'd rather stay anonymous. Yeah, you guys are literally motivating me to make videos so much. I am very grateful for your support. To all my patrons, thank you tons. And to all of you guys for watching this video, thank you for sticking around to the end. But yeah, have a great day, guys. If you're not having one, make it a great day. And I will see you all soon, hopefully to talk about this experience. Hopefully very soon. But yeah, peace.